I'm happy to present our paper, our ongoing work on the paper, How Can We Study Issues of Legitimacy in Europe, investigating the attitudinal and behavioral facets of citizen political disaffection. I'm quite happy that quite some of my co-authors are here today, so we are all ready to answer questions later. But first of all, where are we coming from? I mean, we already talked about it earlier. Most of us, or all of us, have some anecdotal evidence that there's a lack of political trust and a crisis of democracy if we are looking in newspapers or if we are talking to other people. But as we already heard earlier from Henrik, the story is not so clear when we are looking in survey evidence. We have also a figure from your report. So the picture is not so clear that we have a declining political trust. We have fluctuations, decreasing trust, as we already heard. So we ask ourselves, how can we explain that, or how can we better understand this? And we believe that it's that there's three useful terms to better understand what's going on. First of all, attitude, meaning trust, what we already heard about, legitimacy, democratic satisfaction, but at the same time also behavioral aspects, what we also already heard a little bit about earlier. So participation pattern, voting, party membership, etc. And we believe that combining this under the umbrella term of political disaffection is really useful to understand what's going on in Europe. So political disaffection meaning the combination between negative attitudes and the lack of participation. So that's where we're coming from. What guided our question or our research? First of all, how can we learn more about this political disaffection? And at the same time, what are the differences between different groups of citizens? If you would like to get to know a little bit more about concrete research questions, we are happy to talk about it later in the Q&A session as well. But first of all, I would like to use the chance to thank again the people who were participating in the collecting of data, especially the people helping collect the focus group data and the survey data, because we are using these both data for our analysis. So starting with some of our insights from our research and starting with the focus group data. So first of all, looking at the attitudinal facet of citizens' political disaffection. And I know a lot on this slide, but not going too much into detail. Just to let you know, on the left side, we have the different focus groups we did and the characteristic they wished for in politicians. On the right side, the figures demonstrate the aspects why they disapprove with the politicians in the system right now. So we had quite some disapproval of politicians, and these are the rationales and emotions why they disapprove with the politicians. And as I said, without going into too much detail, what is important, we have a mismatch between both of this. So the characteristic they wish for are really not matched by the politicians in their system. And to make it a little bit more understandable, or what we did see in our focus groups, I have some quotes for you. So, for example, people really wish for honesty. Maybe not that surprising, but it's good to know or good to see that really the politicians does not meet this expectation. For example, one person in Germany said they are all somewhere, so many quick fixes are made, that they don't really inform themselves and they don't communicate clearly and transparently. Numbers are thrown around and there's no relation to what the numbers actually mean. So we can see quite some aspects which are important, right? Also that communication plays also an important role in all of this. Another example is closest to the people, what the participants really wish for. And one person in France, for example, said they are people with money. So we can really see how they position politicians in the system and themselves, or how they would like them to be. So going on to the behavioral facets of political disaffection in terms of focus group data still. So first of all, what is interesting, what is important to see, a belief in whether the actions, so the actions from the participants, will impact the desired outcome, influences their decision to participate to a large extent. So you see the efficacy theme. I guess it's a little bit too small, but you can believe me, there's efficacy coded quite often. So it really stood out in our focus groups. At the same time, we could see that they really would like to see feedback for the involvement, or really that their involvement changed something. Maybe also not that surprising, but we really could see that in our data. And at the same time, if these needs are not met, a feeling of pointlessness can arise. So arising from this not being efficacy, not being efficient with participating, or also that they in general not seeing that their participation can change something. But what is interesting, and we already heard a little bit about voting earlier, but in our data we can really see when we are talking about voting, we have some different mechanism at work. People are really also talking about a sense of duty. And so you can see that also tradition and habit comes in different participation forms of participation. So, right. Going on to the survey results, my colleagues did some analysis and first of all concentrated on the attitudinal side. We find two groups with consistently more positive attitudes. These are the two on top, so the blue and green lines, with in general higher political trust, feelings of representation, and democratic satisfaction. At the same time, we have two groups with consistently more negative attitudes on those dimensions, the yellow and red line. You can already see in our classes that it's in connection to the participation, forms of participation, or the how much they participate. So focusing now a little bit on the behavioral aspect. We again for groups, but these are not matching with our attitudinal aspects. So we find two groups with constantly higher participation. So the one on the left and the third bin, is it right? I don't know, the third. And we see two groups with consistently lower participation, the second and fourth. But as I already said to you, these are not the same with the attitudinal. On the down, you see positive attitude, high participation, positive attitude, low participation, negative attitude, high participation, and negative attitude, low participation. These are all four groups. So my colleagues went on and looked a little bit at the group characteristics connected to the four groups. And as you can see, or as I will explain, two groups feel less politically effective and are also more likely to support far-right groups. So, as you can see, the yellow and red group, far-right vote is the one on top and can influence politics. Also, red and yellow, you can see they are lower than the blue and green groups. So the negative attitudes, high participation, and the negative attitude, low participation are these I already explained to you. At the same time, what is interesting that all groups still value the importance of democracy. So you can see the democracy important variable, all groups are still quite high. So even we can see a group with low participation and low attitudes, they are still believing in democratic values. So we can maybe say that democracy right now is not in risk somehow. At the same time, we can also see that all groups still quite high go to voting. So that somehow matches our focus group data, that we have also different mechanisms at work. So what can we conclude from this? We believe that we can have some conclusions on three aspects. First of all, on a theoretical perspective, we contribute to the discussions on political disaffection. And as we can see, we are convinced that it's important to really look at both sides of it, so the attitudinal and the behavioral aspects. If we are just focusing on one side, we are missing something from the picture. In empirical terms, we see that emotions matter, especially in our focus groups, and I guess that's always a little bit difficult to grasp in the survey data. So emotions matter. At the same time, we can identify a disaffected group in our survey data. As I already told you, so low negative attitudes and low participation, the combination of both. But we have still democratic values in our in the focus groups as well as in the survey. And we brought you one quote to maybe underline this. Well, I would say that I have a relatively high basic trust in the democratic system. I believe that it is the right system, but this trust is sometimes abused by actors to a greater or lesser extent. So believe in the system, but underlying factors are a little bit more difficult. Last but not least, we have some practical aspects we want to stress. First of all, it is useful to address these emotions and rationalities underlying. So self-efficacy, pointlessness, or also the sense of duty. At the same time, we believe that there are internal and external reasons for political disaffection, and we would be happy to talk about this later. And last but not least, we have a question for you we really would like to discuss maybe. And this is, how can this knowledge be integrated in the everyday lives of practitioners? So some of you are here, so we are really happy to talk about that. And that's from my side.